In this video, I will show you how to find unknown angles inside of right triangles, and we will use inverse trig functions to do that. As I do this lesson, I will be assuming that you have memorized the definitions of sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so with that in mind, first we have to decide which trig function we're actually going to use. Well, obviously we're given this angle right here, and we have these two sides given. First of all, are either of these the hypotenuse? This one is the hypotenuse, across from the 90 degrees. Is this other side the opposite leg or the adjacent leg? Well, we have to look from the perspective of this angle. This is the opposite leg, because opposite means across from. This down here would be the adjacent leg, because adjacent means right next to. All right, so we have opposite and hypotenuse. Which trig function is that? That's the sine function. So the sine of the angle is equal to the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. So let us set that up. So sine of the angle, and they've used question marks, so I guess I will too. So sine of the question mark angle is equal to the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. So if you want to find the value of the question mark angle, you have to do the inverse sine, okay, which you write this way. Sine with a little -1 superscript is called inverse sine of 40 over 47. All right, and this will give you the angle. So you can just put this in your calculator. All right, let's see if I can just get it on the screen. So inverse sine. So inverse trig functions are above the button, so I will hit second sine, and then I can do 40 over 47. All right, so there it is. So that's 58.328. If it's 5, if the next number is 5 or higher, you have to round up. So 58.328 degrees. All right, problem number 2. So we've got this angle, and then we've got these two sides. This side over here is the hypotenuse, and this side over here is the opposite leg, because it is across from the angle. So that again is the sine function, opposite over hypotenuse. So we will set this up. Sine of question mark is equal to the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. So if you want the angle, you need to do the inverse trig function. So inverse sine of 29 over 34. And then you just put that in your calculator. So second sine, that's inverse sine, 29 over 34. So that's 58.533. degrees. Problem number 3, we have this angle right here, and then we have these two sides. Are either one of these the hypotenuse? No. Okay, this one is the opposite leg because it is across from the angle. This one is the adjacent leg because it is right next to the angle. Opposite and adjacent. Which trig function is that? That's going to be the tangent function, opposite over adjacent. So we will say tangent of question mark is equal to opposite over adjacent. Okay, 8 over 17. If you want the angle, you will need to do the inverse tangent of 8 over 17. All right, that is 25.201. Number 4, we have this angle, and then we have these two sides. Are either one of these the hypotenuse? No, the hypotenuse is over here. This is the opposite leg because it's across from the angle. This is the adjacent leg because it is right next to the angle. So opposite and adjacent, again, that means the tangent function is the one that involves opposite and adjacent. So tangent of question mark is equal to opposite over adjacent. So if you want the angle out of it, you will have to do the inverse tangent of 17 over 44. $21.125. Got to round up because the next number is 5 or higher. 21.125. All right, number 5. We've got this angle right here and these two sides. Are either one of these the hypotenuse? This one right here is the hypotenuse. It's across from the 90. So this one is the adjacent leg. Adjacent means right next to, and this is right next to the angle. So adjacent and hypotenuse, that is the cosine function. Adjacent over hypotenuse. So we will say cosine of question mark is equal to the adjacent leg. Let me go ahead and put in the number. So 44 over 52, all right, adjacent over hypotenuse. So if I want the angle out of it, I will have to do the inverse cosine of 44 over 52. Okay, so inverse cosine 44 over 52. 32.204. Okay, now we have this angle right here, and we have these two sides. Are either one of these the hypotenuse? No. Hypotenuse is over here. So this is the opposite leg, and this is the adjacent leg, all right? Opposite means across from, adjacent means right next to. So opposite and adjacent, which trig function is that? That's the tangent function, opposite over adjacent. So we will set up the tangent function. Tangent of question mark is equal to opposite over adjacent, 14 over 45. If you want the angle out of it, you will have to do the angle equals the inverse tangent of 14 over 45. And then you can just put that in your calculator. All right, so that's 17.281. All right, on number 7, we've got this angle, and we've got these two sides. The 29 is the hypotenuse, and the 14 is the opposite leg. Opposite means across from. Opposite and hypotenuse, that's the sine function, opposite over hypotenuse. So we will say sine question mark is equal to 14 over 29, opposite over hypotenuse. If you want to find the angle, you have to do the inverse sine of 14 over 29. And this is something you can simply put in your calculator. Inverse sine 14 over 29. 28.866. The next number is 5 or higher, so we have to round up. 28.866. So now we have this angle and these two sides. This one is the hypotenuse. Always start with that. This one is the adjacent leg, because adjacent means right next to, and this is right next to the angle. Adjacent and hypotenuse. That is the cosine function, adjacent over hypotenuse. So we will say cosine question mark is equal to 10 over 28, adjacent over hypotenuse. If you want the angle out of it, you will have to do the inverse cosine of 10 over 28. And you can just put that in your calculator. $69.075. Number 9, we have this angle that we're looking for, and then we have these two sides. Neither one of them is the hypotenuse, so this is the adjacent leg because it's right next to the angle, and this is the opposite leg because it is across from the angle. Opposite and adjacent, that is the tangent function, opposite over adjacent. So we will say tangent of x is equal to 17 over 20, opposite over adjacent. If we want to find x, we will have to do the inverse tangent of 17 over 20. All right, this is how you get the angle out of a trig function. So you can just put this in your calculator. All right, I'm getting, whoops, I didn't really look at it. 40.365. Got to round up because if the next number is 5 or higher. 40.365. All right, so, all right. So we're getting out of the situation where we are automatically just looking for the angle. So this time we're looking for a side. So this will be more of a variety. So if I want to find the unknown side, I need to decide, are either one of these the hypotenuse? No, the hypotenuse is over there. So this 13 is the opposite leg because it's across from the angle. This x is the adjacent leg because it's right next to the angle. Opposite and adjacent, that's the tangent function. So we will say tangent of 57 is equal to opposite over adjacent. When you want to solve an equation and the variable is in the denominator, you can swap these. So the x will go here, and the tangent 57 will go here. Just swap these out. And this is something you can just type in your calculator. So 13 over tangent 57. So that's 8.442. For number 11, we've got this angle, and then we've got these two sides. Start with the hypotenuse. This x is the hypotenuse. This is the opposite leg because it's across from the 37. Opposite and hypotenuse, that is the sine function, opposite over hypotenuse. So we will say sine 37 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. When the variable's in the denominator, swap these. So this will give us x is equal to 17 over sine 37. Put this in your calculator. $28.248. The next number is 5 or higher, so you have to round up. 28.248. Number 12. As soon as I see that we're looking for an angle, I'm thinking, aha, this is one of those ones where we will have to use the inverse trig function. So we've got this angle that we're looking for, and these two sides. The hypotenuse is over here, so this is not, neither of these is the hypotenuse. This will be the opposite leg because it's across from the angle. This will be the adjacent leg because it's right next to the angle. Opposite and adjacent, that's the tangent function, opposite over adjacent. So we will start with the tangent function. Tangent of x is equal to opposite over adjacent. If you want the angle, you must do the inverse trig function. Inverse tangent, 16 over 25. Calculator time. Inverse tangent, 16 over 25. Kabam. 32.619. Degrees. This is an angle, so let's put degrees on there. Number 13. All right, we've got this angle and we've got these two sides. This one is the hypotenuse. This one is the adjacent leg because it's right next to the angle. Adjacent and hypotenuse, why, that's the cosine function, adjacent over hypotenuse. So we will write cosine 54 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Uh-oh, variables in the denominator, we swap these out. This will give us x is equal to 12 over cosine 54. Calculator time. $20.416. Got to round up. Number 14. Aha, we're looking for an angle. Notice we will have to do an inverse trig function to find an angle. This is the hypotenuse. And this is the adjacent leg. Adjacent means right next to, and this is right next to the angle. Adjacent and hypotenuse, that's the cosine function, adjacent over hypotenuse. So we will set up the cosine function equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. If you want the angle, you will have to do the inverse trig function. And then that's just a calculator thing. $31.003. Got to round up. Degrees. This is an angle. Number 15. Again, we're looking for an angle, so we will have to do an inverse trig function on this problem. So we've got this angle, and this side is the hypotenuse. Always start with the hypotenuse. This is the adjacent leg. Adjacent means right next to, and this is right next to the angle. Adjacent and hypotenuse. That is the cosine function, adjacent over hypotenuse. So we will set up the cosine of angle x, and that will equal to the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. If you want the angle out of it, you will have to do the inverse cosine of 22 over 35. And that is a calculator thing. $51.055. Degrees. All right, I think this is the last problem. We will not need to use an inverse trig function this time because we are not looking for an angle. This is the hypotenuse. Always start with that. And from the perspective of the angle that we're given, this is the opposite leg. Opposite means across from. So, opposite and hypotenuse. That is the sine function, opposite over hypotenuse. So we will set up the sine function. Sine of 40 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Whenever the variable is in the denominator, you swap these. So this will give you x is equal to 15 over sine 40. Calculator. $23.336. Got to round up because the next number is 5 or higher. 23.336. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.